Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Nothing Special 7, Ex and Meridian, by VII. Narrated by Aiden Snow. Chapter 1. X. X sat rigidly in the dark limousine, staring out of the tinted windows as heavy raindrops pelted the hood. It was a gloomy January morning, the sky gray and overcast with storm clouds, a fitting ambience for a funeral. It would have been senseless to waste the sun's radiance on such a somber occasion. He kept his mouth in a firm line as he watched the funeral home attendants lower his baby brother's casket into the ground. He shouldn't have felt this upset or hurt. He wasn't supposed to feel anything, but he did. X had his elbow braced on the window's ledge, his fist resting lightly against his chin. He stroked his ever-present stubble as he watched a tall, stocky man embrace his grieving mother. He unclenched his fist after recognizing Mr. Harold, his mother's boyfriend of the past 7 months. He'd researched him, just like he background-checked everyone who entered his family's life. He wished it could be him holding his mother and telling her it was going to be okay. But he couldn't. He'd long ago accepted that harsh reality. "I can make it happen." His partner's deep voice cut the silence like a knife. X didn't flinch, unable to be startled by Meridian. His imposing presence was always there. The two of them trained to function at their best when they were together. And they were. He knew what his partner was offering him, but it was forbidden. They were already breaking too many rules by being on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, not to mention being in his hometown. What if someone saw him and recognized him? But he couldn't miss his brother's funeral. I should have been here for him. Then he would still be alive. X was an only child now, although technically he wasn't supposed to have a family at all, his past having been stripped away from him over the years, transforming him into someone else, someone his own mother wouldn't have recognized. She hadn't seen him since he'd said goodbye to her 8 years ago when he was 18. "I wouldn't dare ask you to compromise yourself." "You didn't ask. I offered." X considered Meridian's words as he stared at his mother. If only he could hug her just once, just to let her know she wasn't childless. That he was still alive, watching her, protecting her, regardless of the fact that he couldn't be there to be the son she wanted. That had been Evan's job. His little brother. A great kid with his whole life ahead of him. Correction. Had ahead of him. Evan had been an honor roll student who'd always worked hard to make their mother proud. He'd avoided the riffraff in the neighborhood, staying focused on his future enough to earn him a partial scholarship to the Georgia Institute of Technology. Fuck, it's not fair. X's mind screamed and warred with his emotions that he hid well as he sat as still as stone in the warm leather seat. Anyone on the outside looking in would have assumed he wasn't the least bit bothered by the disappearance of his brother's silver casket as it was slowly lowered 6 feet beneath the cold earth. His fists tried to shake with rage, but he held them steady, not showing emotion. "Why don't you let me tell Mom that I've at least spoken to you this year? She worries so much," Evan said after releasing him from a tight hug. "I worry too. We don't know what it is you do and why you have to be dead to us." X leaned against the metal bars beneath the stadium bleachers behind Evan's high school. While he was between assignments, he'd gotten a cryptic word to his brother for him to meet him there late on a Sunday. His partner was scrambling the school's surveillance cameras on the backside of the property so he could remain undetected. "I wish I could have. But this way is safest, trust me. You know I'm already breaking the rules by speaking to you." "How come you can't have a family? I would never tell anyone where you are or what job you're doing, I swear," Evan pleaded, his emotions wide open. So much so that it overwhelmed X. He sighed at the sincerity in his brother's gray eyes he knew were similar to his own. "I know you wouldn't, Pipsqueak, but this is for your own good. I can't have anyone trying to use you and Mom to get to me."
Jesus, dude. What the hell do you do in the military?
Not the military, but a branch of the government, yes. X didn't answer. He never did. The last thing his mother and brother knew, he'd boarded a bus at Fort Benning 8 years ago to take him to boot camp and was never heard from again. Until he'd broken down and contacted his brother on his 13th birthday with a secure cell phone he'd sent wrapped as a gift. Too much to explain, and I don't have much time.
I know,
Evan said quietly. He dropped his head and kicked at the gravel with the toe of his tennis shoe.
When will I see you again?
He was 15 now, and always full of questions X had to ignore. Hopefully not too long.
It's been almost 2 years.
Did you get your present? X switched gears. He had the skill of deflection, but all his training went out the window when he was with his kid brother, the one who'd looked up to him and wanted to be just like him. Still did. Maybe that was why the director of the program insisted they sever all ties with family and friends. Love was a handicap.
Yes, I loved the computer. It had to cost you a fortune, Xavier. Mom knows they're coming from you. She always gets this slight smirk and pep in her step when I get a black package. I mean, she's not an idiot.
I know you told her I was still alive a long time ago. I suspected you would. But she can't see me, X stressed.
I know. So where's your partner? Evan asked, scanning their surroundings.
He'd never seen Meridian, unless the man wanted him to. He's around. X didn't take eyes off his brother, but he could feel Meridian was close, most likely on the roof of the school building, watching.
You two are some real badasses, aren't you? Evan smirked. Like some secret, covert operatives?
X whistled lightly and glanced away at nothing. I didn't say anything of the sort. His brother laughed and rushed him again, wrapping his gangly arms around his waist.
I miss you so much, and I promise I won't tell anyone.
It took X a second to process he was being hugged, the sentiment almost foreign to him after so long. Then he slowly brought his hands up and draped them around Evan's shoulders and squeezed him in return. It felt good. It felt really good, and Evan hugged him tighter. If his handler saw this, he'd have X in front of the director explaining himself. But he couldn't let go. X, Meridian said roughly, breaking him from his memory. Make it happen, he replied briskly. He kept his sights trained on the grave where his only brother now rested. He thought of all the times he'd gone without seeing Evan, time he'd wasted. Now he'd see his mother for the first time in 8 years. Their driver was a retired Army drill sergeant who went by the nickname Slade. He was the owner of the car service that catered to high-end clients they'd hired for the short duration of their visit. A service that was known for superior driving skills and, most importantly, anonymity. Slade followed the procession until they got onto the main road, heading toward X's childhood home. When they were close to Lakewood Heights, he turned down a one-way street, and Meridian tapped once on the black soundproof divider to tell the driver where to let him out. Slade eased close to the curb in front of a Starbucks and kept the car in drive. I'll text you where to meet me, Slade. 25 minutes, Meridian informed him. He took a quick glance to his right, and X looked to his left, but he knew he'd find no danger here. Then Meridian was out of the car with the grace a man his size shouldn't have, and opened a black umbrella, easily blending into the foot traffic heading east, towards X's mother's home. X never asked how his partner intended to pull this off, but he had no doubt that he would. He'd let Meridian do this for him, even if it could cost them their careers. Slade had them idling in a church parking lot a couple of blocks from where he'd dropped Meridian off 21 minutes ago. X heard their driver's phone ping with a notification. Then they were moving again. This was it. He pressed his back into the seat and took a couple of calming breaths. He was surprised at the foreign fluttering in his stomach. He hadn't felt anything resembling nervousness in years, but he recognized the emotion nonetheless. Chapter 2. Meridian.
Meridian walked into the packed two-story townhouse, still not believing he'd offered to do this. He had no fucking business in his partner's family home, about to approach his only parent. Their mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, all family were supposed to be eliminated from their minds. But the brain didn't always work that way. X's mind was special, and Meridian knew that. It had been easy for him to forget his past because it had been such a shitty one. He was more than happy to extinguish his abusive parents from his life. X was different. No one knew of the emotions he clung to tightly and hid under the ironclad armor he wore on the outside. Regardless of the fact that X still felt deeply, it hadn't made him any less effective at his job, and Meridian was proud to be his partner. The two of them were well known all over the world by corrupt leaders and organizations, and it was all because of X. Because he was one of the few of them who still had a goddamn soul, a conscience. Meridian would do anything to make sure X never lost it. That was why he was doing this. He made his way through the solemn crowd that had followed from the gravesite to attend the repast, most of them dressed in black and chatting quietly. The home was warm and tastefully decorated, though the furniture had been rearranged to accommodate the mourners. He caught snippets of hushed conversations as he walked towards the kitchen at the back of the house where he knew X's mother would be. "It's so sad what happened to Evan." "I know. He was such a good kid. He was so smart. 2 sons killed. I couldn't imagine," another lady whispered over the rim of her coffee mug. Meridian kept his eyes trained on his target location, not stopping to speak to anyone nor meeting the curious gazes that tracked him as he moved. He didn't appear as if he belonged there, a friend of the family, but his dark suit granted him easy access. He was glad there were only a couple of older women in the eat-in kitchen fawning over X's mother as she stirred a steaming pot on the stove. She was a lot shorter than him, with a slight form. It looked as if she'd recently lost weight from the way her black suit hung on her body, and while her face continued to hold the same defeated expression he'd seen on her at the gravesite, her fair skin reminded him of his partner and why he was there. "Melinda, why don't you sit down and eat a little something? I'm sure you'll feel much better than running yourself ragged," one of them said, trying but failing to pull her friend away from the stove. Why do other people think they know what's best for someone else? Meridian didn't shake his head as he stood inconspicuously in front of an 8x10 table beside the patio doors. He perused the 10 to 12 different kinds of cakes and pies on offer. He picked up a small plate and put a piece of lemon cake on it and something that resembled a crumbly coffee cake. "My kitchen does relax me," X's mother huffed. "Can you ladies just give me a second, please?" They stared at her for a long moment as she gazed down at the bubbling dish she was stirring, then warily eyed one another. With resigned sighs, both women retreated into the living room, whispering to each other as if X's mom had gone deaf suddenly. Meridian moved up close behind her. He reached around and set his plate on the counter in front of her. She tensed for a moment, then spun around to meet his glare. He had no reaction to her fright or her gasp. X's mother swallowed thickly, gripping the silver cross hanging around her neck. "I'm sorry for the loss of your son," Meridian spoke, his voice as low a timbre as he could get it. However, Melinda still flinched. "You knew Evan?" she asked, a slight frown creasing her smooth forehead. The only wrinkles on her face were the ones in the corners of her eyes and mouth. "No, I've only heard stories of him." She tried to take a step back, but she was as close as she could get to the stove without getting burned. "From who?" "From his brother." Her lips immediately began to tremble, and the other hand, not gripping the cross, flew to her mouth. She appeared to fight to take in air as she panted quick, short breaths. Watery, pale gray eyes stared at him, and he saw the second the realization settled in. Meridian knew that Evan had told his mother that her other son wasn't dead but actually working deep undercover for the government, but she'd still likely never see him again. Meridian knew of the few clues and trinkets that X had sent his family over the years to let them know he hadn't forgotten about them. He never told anyone that his partner was breaking one of their most important rules. But something about Ex and his family, something about what they'd gone through, was the reason he couldn't sever all ties with his mom and baby brother. He simply wouldn't, and that was something that intrigued him most about his partner, a piece of defiance that gave his extremely calculated existence some excitement.
"You knew Xavier?"
she said around a quiet sob. Meridian shook his head. "No, I know Xavier." Her cries got a bit louder and Meridian started to get agitated. One, because he thought the dueling duo would flock back inside and stall him, but he also didn't like to be around so much emotion.
"Where is he?"
she asked in a harsh whisper as she reached out to clutch his arm, but instinct had him sidestepping her touch before she could make contact.
"My God."
"Come with me. I'll take you to him." She didn't budge, and neither did he. Melinda looked as if she felt something might not be right and narrowed her eyes. Meridian appreciated that she wasn't an idiot, an easy target. "Bring the lemon cake. It's still his favorite." Melinda's eyes widened, as though Meridian had passed her test, and she choked back more sobs as she scurried through the side door that Meridian realized was the pantry and grabbed her purse off a hook. She didn't bother with cake, moving as if she was on a mission. He stood at the patio door waiting for her after she slung a black and gray shawl over her shoulders. Meridian slid the door to the side and eased them outside into the dreary, cold evening with no one else the wiser. "Your keys," Meridian mumbled. Melinda dug aggressively in her small bag and handed the set of keys to him. She got into the passenger seat of her Honda Accord and held her purse tight to her stomach as if she was about to be sick. Meridian backed the car out of the long driveway and headed east. He texted Slade from his smartwatch and told him where to meet him. Melinda started to fidget with her hands when he turned into an expensive condo's underground garage 5 minutes later, tears streaming down her face. Meridian parked a few spots down from where the limo sat idling. He got out and opened Melinda's door for her. She didn't dart out of the car as he assumed an emotional mother would. Instead, she took a couple of deep breaths, dug a crumpled handkerchief from her purse, and wiped it quickly across her cheeks. Then she stood and steeled her spine, staring straight ahead at the sleek limousine.
"You're telling me my oldest son is in that car?"
Meridian didn't respond. He led her towards the vehicle and opened the back door. She ducked inside, and he closed it behind her. Chapter 3. Ex. It took a lot of willpower for Ex to pull his gaze away from Meridian to watch his mother cross the small distance towards him. The tears in her eyes, the rapid rise and fall of her chest, and the stuttering gait as if she struggled to put one foot before the other were all reactions that threatened to overtake him. He couldn't let them. His stare returned to his partner in his tailored black suit and black dress shirt. He looked sharp and deadly. His only loyal friend. And Ex couldn't believe Meridian had come through and done this for him. They could be under surveillance right now. Once they were activated, they'd be tracked and monitored immediately. Their handlers would be online and waiting for their check-in. But there was no way he could leave without letting his mother see, that she wasn't childless. Everything she'd done for him in his young life, every night job she'd worked, and the lonely nights she'd endured on his behalf so he and Evan could be something, would never allow him to desert her. The door opened, and the scent of Estee Lauder filtered into the dark interior before his mother climbed inside, choosing the seat closest to the door. Nostalgia tried to settle into his rigid bones, but he forced his childhood memories away. He sat straight, with both hands resting on his thighs. He held her misty gaze as she cried quietly into her palms, shaking as she sized him up and down slowly. The door on the opposite side opened and Meridian eased his large body into the bench seat across from them, and once again enclosed them in darkness and silence. Ex knew he should say something. He had agreed to this, but now his tongue felt too thick for his mouth.
His pulse beat out of control, and he had to make an extra effort to remain unfazed on the outside. "Hello," he said to his mother as if he were a robot. She gasped and shook her head as if she couldn't believe her ears.
"Hello? Hello?" she sputtered. "If I weren't so relieved to see you, I'd slap the spit out of your mouth."
Ex felt his mouth twitch at hearing his mother's favorite threat when he'd been a headstrong teenager. He didn't say anything, just watched her. She may not have been able to stand up to the violent husband she'd run away from, but she'd chastised her boys with a quick tongue and an iron fist. His mother's hands shook in her lap. She frowned at him, squinting as if she was trying to make out all of his features in the dim lighting.
"Are you my son?" she whispered. "Are you still my Xavier?"
He understood her question. While he was a changed man, a killing man, he would always be her son. He refused to let anyone take her from him. "I am. I'm just different then." Before he could finish his sentence, she launched herself across the space separating them and threw her arms around his neck. His shocked gaze flew to Meridian, who gave him a slight nod, silently telling him it was okay to be uncomfortable while urging him not to overreact. He could feel her arms were 7 inches above his black leather gun holster. He could smell the lavender in his mom's blonde and gray hair from the conditioner she used. He could feel her heart pumping at 112 beats per minute against his chest. He was a man trained to notice everything. His hands were clenched in his lap as he slowly breathed through the embrace. The last hug he'd had was from Evan a year and a half ago. Affectionate moments were too far between for him to ever get used to it. He'd been taught that emotions were weaknesses his enemy could exploit. His mother carefully pulled away when she noticed he wasn't reacting in the same manner as her.
"I'm sorry,"
she sniffed, wiping her nose with the white cloth in her hand.
"You don't feel the same."
"I'm not the same. I'm sorry about Ev. He didn't deserve this." He knew his tone sounded cold and disinterested, making him pause and try a different approach. "I'm sorry I wasn't there." His mom shook her head vehemently.
"No, the two of you were inseparable growing up. You would have been with him, and those bastards would have got both my boys."
His gaze went to Meridian, and his mother's followed. She stared at his partner, perhaps not quite knowing what to think about his detached expression or the firm set of his lips. He sat as straight and rigid as Ex, tightly packed muscles just about concealed beneath his expensive suit.
"And you are?"
his mother asked, seeming to gather herself. Meridian wet his lips, a sign he was just as uneasy as Ex, and mumbled mechanically, "John Smith." Ex didn't marvel at how Meridian had gotten his cautious mother to come with him when she didn't even have his name, only a hardened face and unapproachable posture to go on. And yet she'd gotten into a car with him. But his partner had a gift of wearing whatever mask necessary to get a mark to trust him, at least long enough for him to get close enough to. She frowned and turned back to him, timidly reaching for his fist. He let her pat his cool skin.
"I knew you were still on this earth, Xavier. I could feel it," she whispered. "It wasn't because they said there was no body to recover, but because I'm your mother and I know your spirit would have come to me if you'd died."
Xavier glanced at the cross around her neck.
"But you have to leave now."
The tears had started to fall again, and Ex flexed his hands when he had a foreign feeling to reach out and touch her. His mom looked tired and much older than her 61 years.
"This city is in a war and infested with drug gangs and violence. It's no place for a disciplined man. I don't know what you do in the military. Evan would never say much, but he said you were important. Don't linger here, especially not for me. I'm going to be moving to New Haven with John."
He already knew this.
He'd seen when Mr. Harold had been promoted to the New Haven district manager position at his Amazon job and was able to put two and two together when she'd put her house on the market a week later.
I just can't take it here anymore. I think there've been thugs outside my house because I went to the police all those times, trying to scare me, as if taking my Ev wasn't enough.
She gasped, as if struck by an immense pain in her chest, and before he knew what he was doing, he'd reached for her hand and held on. She seemed to gather a bit more strength when she glanced at their connection, then clutched him back.
I'll leave a forwarding address with the post office.
Don't, Ex said. I'll find you.
His mom swallowed, her gaze darting to Meridian, who hadn't made a move, but Ex was very aware of him.
Even the cops couldn't help me, or any of us who've complained that still live in my neighborhood. There's a big-time police drug task force here that the mayor put together a few years ago, but they refused to help me. Or they couldn't help me. Their hands were tied, I don't know. But my son's killer roams the streets freely, enjoying his life while I...
Are the police corrupt?
He saw the subtle shift in Meridian's posture. He was obviously thinking the same thing. How could it be so difficult to get an arrest when Evan was an innocent victim of a drive-by that had happened in broad daylight? Where were the eyewitnesses? Had there been no one on the street at the time? Were all of the street cameras broken? Ex let out a long breath, releasing his rage. His brother's murderer had gotten off scot-free. His mom looked damn near frantic as she begged him.
You have to leave Atlanta. You're all I've got left. Please, go and never come back here again, Xavier.
He couldn't stomach being the one to cause her more grief. He did what he did easiest. He lied without feeling the slightest amount of guilt.
I will, Mom. As soon as we're done here.
He'd leave after they'd delivered everyone responsible for terrorizing the neighborhood into a grave just like his brother's, and he wouldn't lose sleep over it. With one last hug to last her another 8 years, his mother was out of the limousine and gone in her vehicle back to her youngest son's funeral repast. As they exited the garage, Meridian retrieved his phone from his inside jacket pocket and dialed their driver's cell. Slade picked up on the first ring. Meridian's voice gave Ex chills down his spine.
Get me everything you can on a police drug task force here in one of Atlanta's precincts.
As always, they were thinking the same thing.
If the police are corrupt, we'll take care of them, too.
Chapter 4. God. 1 week later.
You got anything back there, Green? Over.
God said into his radio, waiting for one of his lead detectives and enforcers on the streets to respond.
Negative. All's quiet. A little too quiet for my liking. Where the hell is everybody? Over.
His officer answered, his deep voice sounding unnerving in the dark cab of his midnight F-350.
It's like something ran them off the block, God grumbled, more to himself than to his partner who sat beside him. Or somebody.
But who? Day asked. Like clockwork, every Sunday night someone from Big Mike's crew shows up to make a drop to Jason and his brother Marcus. Now tonight, of all nights, they don't show.
Right. I don't like it. If the Stewart brothers got tipped off that we're here, then that means I have a snitch in my precinct, God said in a hushed growl that sounded like the diesel engine that powered his massive truck.
Day picked up the radio. Free. Confirm there are no unmarked units patrolling. Over. He asked his technology specialist, who was back at their office observing their every move from various live feeds on his multi-monitor high-tech computer system. After a few seconds, Free answered in a low tone. No units confirmed. Over. God took a black elastic band from around his wrist and tied his shoulder-length hair into a messy bun at the nape of his neck, then double-checked his holster. Day did the same, always seeming to recognize when God was ready to hit go.
Let's head up there and ask them why. We already got Jason on camera making buys and selling. We can snatch him and his brother on that and have Roe use the charges.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?